Here are 7 reasons you must not take a job offer. And stay to the end because number 7 traps a lot of people. I've experienced it myself, and yet it is a telltale sign that you need to say no to the offer. I'm a human resources leader and job search strategist who turns job seekers into job shoppers. I am credited with hundreds of thousands of job search success stories. You may have seen me on ABC News, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, and more. New videos on Thursdays. Okay, so I am going to give you some pretty reliable signs that you should not take a job offer from the perspective of a human resources professional who has seen the seedy underbelly of organizations and knows the signs when you should banana split and not join a company. But I'll also acknowledge that beauty is in the eye of the beholder here. What I mean by this is that one person's nightmare employment situation can be another person's daydream. Such as, for one person, a high performance, competitive environment can be extremely draining when they feel overworked, and they may even find the competitive nature to feel toxic, while another person could take that same job and thrive. The competition drives them. They're learning so much every day. They are motivated and earning the most they ever have in their career. It's the same job, but 2 different people. What's important here is that you understand what you want. I put my clients through a proprietary system called the one-page career vision, where before they're jumping in and applying to jobs, they uncover exactly what they want for their next role. And then they hold companies to that standard. And I'll tell you, it is wild how companies then rise to those standards and start convincing them to work for the company. If you are looking for help on your job search, I will link more information on job search coaching. But the lesson here is that you need to know what you want before you even apply to roles, or much less interview. You don't need to take a job in order to know if it's going to be right for you. There's so much you can discover about yourself and the opportunity before signing that employment contract. Okay, Starfish? All right, let's dive into the first sign that you should decline a job offer, and that is the business model. When you're interviewing with a company, pay close attention to the business model. Do your research and ask lots of questions about it. I come from the technology startup industry, and there are many companies who have millions of dollars in funding, but have dubious business models. I've got to check out these pitch decks that these sweet talkers put together to get this incredible funding, because it's got to be full of Jedi mind tricks. For example, I was interviewing at a hot technology startup. I bet you know the name of it, and I'm not going to say it, but you can guess who it is in the comments. And the first red flag was they had this massive influx of venture capital and were hiring extremely fast. Scaling a company really fast is fraught with issues, especially for the human resources department that I would have joined. Also, one of their company values was something like be thrifty, and that was my first clue, Macklemore. I dug into that value and discovered that due to the nature of the business, where there's a lot of hardware involved, the profit margins were razor thin. So in order for the business to make any money, they had to be frugal about everything. It's good for a business to be money conscious, but you don't want to be begging for every minor budget and salary increase. And I finally looked at the industry and saw that there were some big, fierce competitors coming for them. And there was legislation that was being passed that impacted their business. So long story long, I didn't take the offer, even though it could have sounded really cool to have their name on my resume. Within 6 months of that interview, they had massive layoffs of hundreds of people, and I would have likely lost my job. So it felt good to be right, but also felt terrible for all those people who experienced that layoff. I also have a video on the top signs that a company is about to have a layoff, so I will link that below. The second reason you should consider declining a job offer is unrealistic expectations. Some companies have a habit of stacking up too many responsibilities into one role to the point where success in that role is near impossible, such as hiring a VP of sales and expecting them to be a player coach, where they are hitting quota, building and leading a team without already having a bit of team and support to ensure they have what they need to be successful. This also happened a lot in my HR career, where I'd be interviewing with a company, they'd want to hire me as their head of HR, I'd look at the goals they wanted me to achieve and think, I'm either not going to sleep or I will be working around the clock in this role, or I'm simply going to fail. So I'd say, I'm not taking this role unless I am able to hire these two roles to report to me in order to achieve these outcomes. Now, I will say sometimes broad expectations are not a bad thing. I once took a job where they said, we want you to build the human resources department from the ground up. They didn't know what the goals were, but they said that they trusted me to figure it out. That was the greatest job of my career. I had so much ownership and autonomy, but that's because that matches my personality. I like to blaze my own trail, carve my own pumpkin, arrange my own bouquet, so to speak. So for other people, that would be an absolute nightmare scenario. So you need to take time to understand yourself. You can detect these signs sometimes in the job description. And so I will link a video to show you how to notice red flags in a job description. The third reason to not take a job offer is inadequate compensation. So this is a little tricky. I don't necessarily recommend always choosing the job that will pay you the most, and studies show that job seekers will tend to take lower paying jobs if the complete package best plays to their needs and values, which is fantastic. So what you want to do is do a bit of salary research. I'll link a video on how to do that if you want a step-by-step tutorial and see where this compensation lies for your profession and location. If it's below market, try to negotiate up and look at some other aspects of the offer to see if those could make up for it, such as a clear path for massive career growth, maybe a lot of equity, possibly very flexible and remote arrangement, so on. But if the salary is just low and the rest of the offer is meh, and you're noticing yourself trying to convince yourself that it's probably fine, this could be a sign to decline the offer, especially if you negotiate and they will not budge at all. This might be an indication that once you land the job, it will be near impossible to get an increase. One tactic to get a higher salary offer out of the gate is to have a strong resume, because that's what makes a first impression for every interview with that company, and it may also be referenced when the hiring manager is making a case for how much you should be paid. So I will link a workshop with a highly effective resume formula below. The fourth reason you should consider rejecting a job offer is lack of boundaries. One of the quickest ways for you to burn out is to get a job that works you to the bone. I won't call out any specific names of companies, you can do your research, but there are many companies that have reputations for intense working hours, such as some large consulting firms, accounting firms, some medical positions, some investment banking, some high-tech companies with this work hard, play hard culture. Ooh. These pay you what I've coined to be expensive money, which is where, yes, the overall salary you get by the end of the year may be sizable, but at what cost did you take that money? Did you work 80 hours per week where while your salary was high, if you broke it down per hour, you're actually not making very much? Also, if it's costing you your free time, your sleep, your mental health, all of those are really high costs. Anything that costs you your sanity is not paying you enough, my friend. So make sure you are not taking a job that is expensive money unless you are fully ready and willing to make that sacrifice. That brings us to the fifth thing to look out for to potentially reject a job offer, which is employee turnover. It's kind of like an apple turnover. Both are flaky, but employee turnover is much less sweet. Now, if people are frequently resigning from a company, that is a sign that you may not want to take this offer. I'll give you this. It's not always clear what a company's turnover is. You can deduce employee turnover by doing informational interviews with current and former employees of that company. I'll link an informational interview guide below to help you with these conversations. You can also ask what makes this role that you're interviewing for open. And sometimes Your interviewer will spill that the person left or that they've cycled through multiple people in this role in the past year. And yes, you can check Glassdoor. That can give you some insights on what employees are saying about working there. But do note that typically only the people who are the most disgruntled with the company post on Glassdoor. All the people who are content usually don't think to write anything, so that website can be pretty unbalanced. This brings us to the number 6 reason to consider declining a job offer, and this is a biggie. They are too fast to give you the offer. Too fast often means cramming all of your interviews and an offer into 1 to 3 days. For some companies and types of positions, like low skill roles, a short turnaround on offers or even offers on the spot can be normal. For skilled positions with sizable salaries, it's typical for it to take at least a week, and in some cases, many weeks. And this is a bit nuanced, but it's not necessarily the amount of time, but more the sense of urgency that should make you wary of the offer. Such as, I have a friend who had one interview for a VP level role, was given the offer letter a few hours after the call, and was told he needed to make a decision about the offer by the next day. He barely had time to think and process this opportunity, and he barely got to know the company. He was only able to speak to that one person who interviewed him, and he got swept up in the moment and the excitement and accepted the offer. You can see where this is going, right? This is the moment in the horror film where we're all shouting to not go into that creepy hidden room behind the bookshelf with the shrine, and yet in he goes. Here's where it all went wrong. The company didn't put his equity in the initial offer, and they said, just go ahead and sign the offer and we can amend it later with those details. Well, they ended up changing his role as soon as he joined the company, and it was completely different than what they had described. They were so disorganized that they weren't quite sure what they were looking for, which is why everything changed. The role they moved him into was a lower level, and they told him that level didn't get equity. And so it was a complete bait and switch, and he ended up leaving that company within a few months. So be very careful of these exploding job offers. I have an entire video on exactly how to respond if you do get one of these types of offers. It's good to just watch that to make sure you are fully prepared. And there is a really good way to buy more time in that video. I'll link that below. Let's round this out with the number 7 reason to consider rejecting a job offer. They are persuading you. If you are in an interview process and they seem to spend almost no time evaluating you and nearly all of the time convincing you that this is a great opportunity, I'm sorry to say that job likely royally sucks. I was once recommended to go to this info session about a job. I show up and a woman talked the entire time about how she went from having very little money and freedom to having lots of money and owning her dream Mercedes. At no point in this presentation did they say what the job was, the task that needed to be performed, the pay for the role, or any other important job details. They just wanted to sell us on the outcome, which is a Clifford the Big Red Flag. Now, what does this sound like, my friend? If you said pyramid scheme, you would be correct, right? I guessed it was a pyramid scheme in the comments if you detected it. When a job is very undesirable, the company will focus most of their energy on convincing you to join them, when really they are very desperate and just need someone, anyone, to be a warm body on a cool seat. Of course, all of this is not the case if you are a skilled professional who is in high demand. In this case, employers are focused on enticing you to join their company because they are already well aware of your reputation and your skill set, and they understand that you have many employment options. So that does not mean that this is a bad job. You're in high demand. Enjoy being dazzled. How many of these signs have you seen when you've been offered a job? Let's review. Number 1, their business model. Number 2, unrealistic expectations. Number 3, inadequate compensation. 4, lack of boundaries. 5, employee turnover. 6, too fast to give an offer. 7, they are persuading you. Write which numbers you have experienced in the comments. And be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. You've got this. Wi-Fi high five.